Chapter 16. The driveway into the warehouse complex led down a slight gradient towards one of the two largest buildings on the property, before it carved away to the left, around into a wide car park. To Steele's right hand, the administration building followed the line of the road and the front fence, and to his left was a small security building. The biggest structure stood in the middle of the complex. There were two separate buildings, each built to 3 stories with a single walkway joining them from the second level. On the ground floor, connecting the two warehouses as well, was a terrace and covered area. The footpath from the main drive reached towards the undercover area and through to the docks on the far side. Another footpath ran between the two warehouses and the administration building from the south of the complex. Steele paused at the curve of the driveway, looking off towards the pathway to the south. At the end of the second warehouse, a tall silo stuck its head above the rooftop, and at the other end of the path he could see some shipping containers stacked together and what was probably another car park. The sight of the undercover area between the two buildings held his attention, for it seemed like it was a good position to conduct the meeting between the parties. With access from the docks as well as the two car parks, it seemed to hold the most potential. It had easy access and clear escape path into either of the buildings or out towards the docks. It seemed he had already found the right spot, but Steele turned away and continued following the driveway around the corner into the larger of the parking lots. The car park was all but deserted now, with only a few vehicles occupying the space under the orange lamps. At the far end, the dividing fence between the complex and the neighbouring one poked its head above the trees that were planted in the front, and Steele took note of the buildings next door that could look over into this compound. He also noted the small building for the security team on his left as he walked into the parking lot. In that building was where all the camera feeds were, as well as the master controls for the lights, alarms, doors and gates. Reuven had promised there would be no security on the night of the deal, but Steele had his suspicions as to the worth of the man's promises. From the parking lots, the roadway curved around to the side of the main warehouse, towards the waterfront and past the loading zones. Many trucks were already parked in the bays, waiting for the morning dispatch, and Steele slowly walked along the line. At the end of the loading bays, the roads continued and turned to the right, past the shipping control tower to the south along the docks. He was on the water side of the complex now, and the smell of salt and brine was heavy in the air. A coolish breeze wafted off the subdued waves and tickled his nose. To the south, across the waters, shimmering with city lights, he could see the junkyard port clearly, the lights of the houses bobbing on the rolling currents, and the housing lights of Folks Isle glowing like a fire beyond. The large concrete docks were empty now, and Steele looked at the large cranes built into the wharfs. They were used for loading and unloading large crates and shipping containers, and at their heights, small red lights flashed intermittently. The docks were empty now, with only the water there to lap lazily onto the rocks. He paused halfway along the wharf and turned back to the two large warehouses, and to the undercover walkway that joined the two of them. He could see the back of the entrance from this point, and the lights of the undercover area shone brightly down upon the seats and tables that had been set out for the company workers to relax during their lunch breaks. That area under the walkway between the two buildings still seemed like the best position to conduct the deal. A plan slowly formed in his mind, and Steele took out his phone to message Knox. "Tell Reuven I need full access to the master controls of the complex, especially the lights and security doors, gates, etc." After he sent his message, he slipped his phone away and thought to take a closer look at the undercover area. But movement at the far end of the docks caught his eye as a shadow moved under the lights and into the stacked containers of the crates. At first he thought it was someone working late, but they did not look like a worker, and Steele was reminded that another person impersonating an inspector was here as well. The guard had said it was a cute woman too. His suspicions and curiosity moved him away from the covered walkway and seating towards the stacks of shipping containers. Quickening his pace, he walked along the docks, following the roadway past the second warehouse and silo. Here the road turned away to the right, leading along the edge of the stacked containers and towards the secondary car park that could be accessed from the city streets through a small gateway. Steele was about to walk to where he had seen the woman head into the maze of shipping containers, but took a different path, following the road that ran between the silo and the stacking area. His gaze was turned into the towering containers as he walked, trying to peer through the heavy shadows and beyond the stark white area of the light created by the lamps. The vibration of his phone in his pocket drew his attention, and he stopped to read the replying message from Knox. "I don't want to ask Reuben for any more favours. That could get a bit nasty, if you know what I mean. But I know someone who could hack the security for you." Steele frowned and replied quickly, "Too much of a risk." Knox's reply came just as swiftly. "No risk. She's one of the best hackers in the city. Don't ask how I know her. It's a long story and pretty complicated. She'll be able to do it easy though. I'll call her now." Steele clenched his jaw and sighed irritably, but he left the conversation there. He trusted Knox's judgment. And in truth, he did not like the idea of asking any more favours of Reuben. He seemed like the type to hold on to such an advantage, to call it in at a time that would most benefit him, and leave everyone else the worse for it. Steele had absolutely no desire to owe Reuben anything. As he put his phone back in his pocket, Steele looked up towards the secondary car park, just in time to see a woman emerge from the shadows of the containers, 50 or so metres ahead of him. She noticed Steele as well, and their eyes locked. It was Farron. Steele suspected that it might have been her, and seeing his thoughts confirmed, increased his suspicions. A mixture of delight and hesitance swelled inside him as he started to walk towards Farron, who stood waiting for him. In the harsh light of the street lamps, he could see the expression of suspicion and surprise on her face. "Evening," Steele greeted with a slight smile as he moved to stand before the woman. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I didn't think you'd be here either," Farron replied, glancing away to the front gates of the compound. Steele studied the woman closely, noticing her casual clothes, which made her seem very different from when she was wearing the professional attire at Clara's office, and the gown on their date. It reminded him of the Farron he knew in high school. During school hours she wore a skirt and shirt like all female students, but out of school hours he remembered she preferred skinny jeans and sandals. Even now she seemed to prefer simple black jeans and a white tank top, and Steele had to admit he preferred seeing her wearing such. Clara told me to do some recon," Farron explained before he had even asked, bringing a slight frown to his face. "Why are you here, though? I would think Jimmy would send someone he trusted more." "I'm not here under anyone's instructions," Steele replied, still regarding Farron closely. "This is mine and Knox's deal, remember? He may not be able to make it, but I'm still invested in its success." "Success?" Farron narrowed her eyes slightly at him. "Is there more to it than setting Clara and Jimmy against each other? You don't actually want the weapons, do you?" "That's what I mean by success," Steele answered with some confusion. "I don't care about the guns." "Right," Farron said slowly. "What do you think?" "I think," Steele said after a pause, "that if I was a security guard, I would not let you in here dressed so casually and claiming to be an inspector." Farron seemed surprised and glanced down at her clothing, before she blushed slightly and laughed as she looked away. "I'm a plainclothes inspector," she explained and showed him her identification tag. "See? Legitimate." Good forgery," Steele nodded, a smile coming to his face. "Only the best for the company," Farron replied, her voice edged with sarcasm and notes of something else that Steele could not place. "But you didn't answer my question. What do you think of the complex? Are there any ideal places to set the meeting point?" Steele narrowed his eyes slightly, not replying straight away as he looked back to the buildings and shipping containers. From the secondary car park he spotted a security guard coming towards them, making his scheduled rounds, flashlight in hand as he headed into the stack of containers. "Might be a few," he said at length, and they started down the roadway at a leisurely pace. "I'm more interested in your assessment of the complex, though." He looked at Farron curiously, noticing a slight hesitance as she replied. "Yeah, there are a few good points," she agreed. "The undercover area filled with seating that joins the two warehouses might be the best position." "Really?" Steele asked curiously. "Oh, come on," Farron frowned at him. "You already thought that." "It's central with good paths of approach and escape." He smiled and nodded. "My biggest concern is whether Jimmy will actually take the bait," Farron continued seriously. "You sure he'll come on the night?" "I'm not sure, no," Steele replied honestly, "but the odds of him coming are high. I suspect that if he does, he'll come from the water, near the shipping control tower. Farron looked thoughtful before she nodded, and together they turned from the road onto the footpath that ran between the second warehouse and the administration building. Beside the concrete path were planted some small bushes, and were hardy enough to survive being neglected, but still appealing enough to the eye. In fact, the cultivated hedges were covered in small white flowers that shimmered in the lights that shone down from above. The fragrance from the flowers filled the night air and brought a delightfully sweet scent to his senses. At the end of the walkway, the pathway turned into the undercover area, and as they walked towards it, a pair of employees working late came from the building and swiftly walked for their cars, parked in the lot on the other side of the security building. A light rain had started to fall now, dancing on the breeze and shining brightly in the light of the pathway lights. The humidity was still in the air, making him feel stifled and regret wearing his jacket. But his jacket proved useful as the rain quickly increased and came tumbling down from the dark night sky. It grew heavy quickly, and together he and Farron jogged for the cover of the area, joining the two warehouses. "Well," Farron said once they ran up the few steps and into the open space between the cover of the second floor walkway, "I guess I should have brought my umbrella with me." She laughed as she looked down at her wet shirt, which had become slightly transparent, and flicked the water from her hands. Steele smirked and flapped his jacket to dislodge the water, and wiping his face, he turned his attention back to the covered area. As he had spied before, there were many seats and tables about the area, some raised garden beds at the edges, and large doorways that led into both the warehouses at either side. The sound of the rain drummed on the walkway above, and gave all indications of not stopping any time soon. "This will be the spot," Steele said to himself as much as to Farron, wandering over to the other side of the area to look towards the large wharfs. Through the haze of the rain and the steam that wafted from the ground, the cranes of the docks stood like ghostly skeletons in the night. To the north, the lights of the junkyard port were subdued, and the shipping control tower was like a lonesome beacon at the edge of the water. "Jimmy will come from the north," Steele continued, still talking more to himself, even though Farron had joined him at the edge of the cover. "Which means Clara can set up a backup among the shipping containers to the south." "Wouldn't the car park be better?" Farron suggested thoughtfully. "Over in the corner by the security building?" "No," Steele shook his head. "That whole side is overlooked by the buildings from the neighbouring compound. Jimmy might set up watches there, or even the police." "Police?" Farron frowned. "Why would they be here? How would they even know?" "They'll know," Steele said confidently. "Reeves still has me watched, but due to the number of criminals with guns present at this deal, I doubt he'll even take action." Steele kept an eye on Farron as he spoke, noticing the flicker of a doubt come to her face as she looked away and towards the falling rain. "I would like to know more about the person we're dealing with for guns, though," Steele continued. "I suspect they'll also come and survey the compound. They'll also likely have their own backup nearby should things turn bad." "Which they will. They always do." "Don't say that." Steele turned a slight smile towards her. "I'm sure everything will go off without a hitch. The deal will be made, and neither Jimmy nor the police will interfere." "You really believe that?" Farron looked at him skeptically. "Not at all," he replied flatly, causing her to smirk and look away. Silence dropped between them as they looked out through the rain and the docile waters beyond the wharf. The rain was still heavy, deadening the waves and making them seem like a blur of reflected light from the city. The downpour had flattened the steam that had been rising and cooled the air once more. The whole world seemed to fall away at that moment, and the swirling plans and thoughts in Steele's mind became silent. An overwhelming sense of peace and stillness filled him, and a slight smile came to his face, though he did not notice it appearing. The quietude felt like it lasted hours, but it was not awkward. In fact, it was quite the opposite. He felt more relaxed at that moment than he had felt in a very long time. Like the troubles before him and the surrounding him were no more. Gradually, his plodding thoughts returned to his mind and the sound of the rain became loud. Drawing in a deep breath, he looked curiously to Farron, who seemed lost in thought. "Is this what you planned?" he asked her, bringing a confused look to her face. "Back in high school, when we could imagine our futures, was this what you had imagined?" A flicker of pain came to Farron's features and she looked away. No, she replied honestly, hints of bitterness in her voice. Of course it wasn't. What about you? I don't know, he said distantly, his mind returning to the days of high school. If everything had gone normally, I'd be a detective in the police force. Normally? Farron asked curiously. What's that supposed to mean? What's normal in this city? Steele shrugged and did not reply, taking another deep breath. But working for the company is a long way from being a detective, Farron remarked, drawing his eyes back to hers. I guess, he shrugged. People change, I suppose. Not that much they don't, Farron was quick to reply. I could say the same about you, couldn't I? He narrowed his eyes slightly. I suppose. She looked away, her jaw clenching slightly as a frown came to her face. Silence fell over them once more. This time was tense, and Steele hesitated to say something more. You told me your plan is to simply make a lot of money, Farron said after a few more minutes of heavy silence. Does that mean once you've removed Jimmy and Clara, you'll try and take their place as an associate for the company? I don't know, Steele replied honestly. Maybe, I guess. What about after that? Farron pushed, drawing his eyes back to hers. Will you take down Benedict Vandermont, as well as take up his mantle as board member? That seems to be like a reasonable progression. He nodded slightly, though he knew his words sounded hollow. Money is freedom in the city, I guess. Farron looked away, her voice tight, causing him to narrow his eyes curiously at her. Why not aim for chairman of the company? Farron, Steele said seriously, placing a hand on the woman's shoulder and bringing her blue eyes back to his. I like the company as little as you do. I don't want to work for it. I don't want to run it. In truth, I don't know what I want anymore. I thought I wanted what Benedict has, but after meeting him early today, I'm not sure. I'm lost. Steele ended it there, and with a deep breath he looked back to the views towards the open water. The rain had lessened as the squall drifted away to the southeast, causing the humidity to start to rise along with the steam from the ground. Come on, Farron said, her tone lighter as she started away. The rain is stopping. I'll give you a lift back to Knox's apartment. Steele did not say anything as he walked with Farron out from the undercover area and towards the large car park in the northwest corner of the complex. This is your car? Steele asked with some surprise as Farron walked to a rather fancy-looking luxury sports car. The vehicle was a matte black coupe with a long bonnet and tinted windows. The rims looked as expensive as the rest of the car, and inside was all black leather. Yes, Farron said as if it was obvious. It's my favorite. Favorite? Steele raised an eyebrow. Meaning you have more than one? 3, actually, Farron said, a little sheepish and embarrassed. In that case, let's get something to eat. Your shout, Steele said, causing Farron to laugh in exclamation. My shout? She echoed, a smile on her face as she started the engine and headed towards the gate. Fine, but it'll only be Auntie Poe's kitchen. And next time, you're shouting dinner. Cheapskate, Steele replied evenly, a smile coming to his face, and Farron laughed again. The security guard regarded them both with some suspicion as they left, but no doubt the man was used to certain oddities, considering Deke Reuven was the owner of the complex. Steele just hoped that the other guards would be more relaxed about the security, for he needed to return here once more before the night of the deal and make a few arrangements. With Knox in hospital, the deadline seemed much closer, and he knew he had a good many more things to organise and do before the evening was ready. It was a good start though, and the complex would suit his plans well enough. But like all well-laid plans, it would likely go awry, especially considering he was dealing with Jimmy Pierce. The man was unpredictable and dangerous. Steele tried to push his concerns to the back of his mind so he could enjoy dinner with Farron, but they persisted, and he longed for that moment of peace he'd experienced under the cover of the walkway, standing with Farron as they watched the rain together.